But first, tens of thousands of people marched in cities across Australia today to show their pride in Australia and to call for a stop to mass immigration.
The government's supposed to work for us, the people. We don't want half there going on, so we're making a stand today to make things right. Albo, you work for us, mate, and you've got to go.
There's a sound you hear in old movies, the sound of a runaway train, the desperate whistle, the screech of metal on metal, the panicked faces of the passengers as they realise the driver has lost control. And in the driver's cabin? Maybe he's asleep at the switch. Maybe he's been tied up by corporate interests who want the train to keep going faster, no matter the cost. Or maybe, just maybe, he's ignoring the screams of the passengers on purpose because he thinks he knows better. He thinks the train can handle the speed. He thinks the rickety bridge up ahead will hold. Right now, Australia is that runaway train. And we, the Australian people, are the passengers. We're screaming at the driver to slow down. We're pointing at the collapsing bridge ahead. But the driver, our government, isn't listening. They're shoveling more coal into the engine, telling us to enjoy the ride. This is the story of how the Australian people said no to high immigration and how their government decided to ignore them. This is the story of a nation on a runaway train heading for a cliff. And the most infuriating part, the driver knows we're screaming. They can hear us. They just don't care. They're backed by the big business lobby, the property developers, the university vice-chancellors, all of whom are getting rich off this runaway train. They're the ones who have tied up the driver and are whispering in his ear, telling him to go faster. They don't care about the passengers. They don't care about the bridge. They only care about their profits. And the mainstream media? They're in the dining car, sipping champagne and telling us how wonderful the view is. They're telling us not to worry, that the driver is a professional, that the bridge is perfectly safe. They're lying to us, and we're here to pull the emergency brake. We're here to expose the people who have hijacked this train. We're here to give a voice to the passengers who are being ignored, and we need your help. If you're tired of being a passenger on a runaway train, if you're ready to take back control, then join our Patreon. We're building a resistance, one passenger at a time. For months, the message from the Australian people has been getting louder and louder. It's not a whisper. It's not a murmur. It's a roar that is being deliberately ignored by the political class in Canberra. Let's look at the evidence. In November 2025, a news poll, the gold standard of political polling in this country, found that a staggering 64% of Australians want fewer immigrants.
Well, a fresh news poll has dropped in The Australian this evening. It reveals almost 2/3 of Australians want fewer immigrants.
Let that sink in. Almost 2/3 of the country. And it's not a soft preference. 39%, almost 4 in 10 Australians, want a lot fewer immigrants. Only a tiny 7% want more. The message could not be clearer. And it's not just one poll. A Resolve Political Monitor poll in October found that those supporting a significant reduction in migration outnumbered those opposing cuts by 4-1. A Macquarie University poll found that 2/3 of Australians believe we should reduce immigration to address the housing crisis. And an Institute of Public Affairs poll, also in October, found that 71% of Australians support a temporary pause on immigration until our infrastructure, our schools, our hospitals, our roads, our houses, can catch up. 71%. That's not a majority. That's a landslide. That's a national consensus. And who is leading this charge? The very people this government claims to care about, the young. The IPA poll found that among 18 to 24-year-olds, support for a pause on immigration has skyrocketed from 50% in 2023 to 74% today. The kids aren't All right, they're being priced out of the housing market. They're stuck in endless traffic. They can't get a hospital bed, and they know, even if the government won't admit it, that out-of-control immigration is making it all worse. This isn't a fringe view. This isn't a radical position. This is the mainstream. This is the silent and not so silent majority of Australians. And their message is being met with a deafening silence from Canberra. When asked about the polling in November, what did Prime Minister Anthony Albanese say? He waffled. He talked about rejecting extremes of the right or of the left. He refused to engage with the substance of the issue. He refused to acknowledge the legitimate concerns of the Australian people. He treated them with contempt. And that contempt is being returned in spades. So why are Australians so angry? Because they're not stupid. They can see what's happening with their own eyes, and the numbers back them up. The Albanese government has presided over the largest influx of migrants in our nation's history. In the 2023-24 financial year, a record 1.1 million new migrants entered Australia. In the first 2 years of the Albanese government, a total of 1.1 million migrants. Let's be clear, that's not a return to normal after the pandemic. That's a deliberate, radical and reckless acceleration of our population growth with no plan, no consultation and no consent from the Australian people. The government will try to spin these numbers. They'll talk about net overseas migration, which was 446,000 in 2023 to 2024. But that's still a city the size of Canberra arriving every single year. And the latest data from 2025 shows the runaway train is still picking up speed. In the year to August 2025, net arrivals were 467,410, the highest 12 months to August on record. The first 9 months of 2025 alone saw more than 415,000 permanent and long-term arrivals. The government has a target of reducing net migration to 260,000 this financial year, but they're on track to blow past that by a country mile. This is not an accident. This is a choice to prioritise the interests of big business who want cheap labour and the university sector who want international student fees over the interests of ordinary Australians. A choice to flood our cities with people without any thought for where they will live, how they will get to work, or who will pay for the extra infrastructure. A choice to ignore the will of the people. And the people are starting to notice. The government's own population projections are a horror story. They're forecasting a population increase of 13.5 million people in the next 40 years. That's like adding another Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane to the country. Where are these people going to live? How are we going to power their homes? Where are we going to find the water? The government has no answers. They have no plan. They just have a blind faith in the magic of a big Australia. And they're willing to sacrifice our quality of life, our environment and our social cohesion on the altar of that faith. And what is the price of this choice? We're paying it every single day. We're paying it in the worst rental crisis in living memory, with vacancy rates at record lows and rents going through the roof. We're paying it in the housing crisis, with the IPA calculating that migration alone created a housing shortfall of almost 180,000 homes between 2022 and 2024. We're paying it in our congested roads, our overcrowded schools, our overwhelmed hospitals. We're paying it in the destruction of our environment and the mockery of our carbon emission targets. And we're paying it in the erosion of our social fabric. The IPA poll found that 77% of Australians believe mass migration is making our country more divided. This isn't about race. This isn't about xenophobia. This is about common sense. It's about the simple fact that you can't add millions of people to a country without a plan and not expect things to break. It's about the fact that when you have a housing crisis, the last thing you should do is pour fuel on the fire by importing more demand. It's about the fact that when your infrastructure is crumbling, you don't put more pressure on it. It's about the fact that when your society is fracturing, you don't accelerate the process. This is the price of the government's apathy, the price of their arrogance, the price of their betrayal. And it's a price that is being paid not by the politicians in their taxpayer-funded cars, not by the CEOs in their harbourfront mansions, but by ordinary Australians. By the young couple who can't afford a home, by the family stuck in a tiny apartment, by the commuter stuck in traffic for hours every day, by the patient waiting for a hospital bed, by the pensioner who can't afford their electricity bill. These are the real victims of the government's Big Australia policy, and they've had enough. And what is the political consequence of this betrayal? We're seeing it unfold before our very eyes. The two major parties, Labor and the Coalition, are in freefall. Their combined primary vote is at just 60%, the weakest it has been since Newspoll began. Why? Because on the biggest issue facing the country, they are basically the same. They are both addicted to high immigration. They are both in the pocket of the same corporate interests. They are both ignoring the will of the people. And into that vacuum has stepped Pauline Hanson's One Nation. Their support has surged to a record high of 15%. Why? Because they are the only party that is saying what 2/3 of Australians are thinking. They are the only party that is listening. And the political establishment is terrified. They'll call them racist. They'll call them extremists. They'll do everything they can to demonise them. But they can't ignore the numbers. They can't ignore the fact that millions of Australians from all walks of life, from all political persuasions, are looking for an alternative. They are looking for someone, anyone, who will stand up and say, enough. Enough with the lies. Enough with the spin. Enough with the betrayal. This is not just a protest vote. This is the beginning of a political revolution. A revolution against a political class that has sold out the Australian people. A revolution against a system that is broken. A revolution that is only going to get bigger. And it's a revolution that is being led, not by the politicians, not by the media, but by the Australian people themselves. By the people who have had a gutful. By the people who are no longer willing to be passengers on a runaway train. By the people who are ready to take back control of their country. The question is, will the driver listen before it's too late? To see the latest Australian crisis, click this video here.